In this video, I'm going to show you how to calculate the ceding commission when you have a sliding scale ceding commission. So the first thing you want to do is to build your scale, and all those numbers are given. You'll notice you have a 34% ceding commission. That is actually repeated down here in the problem. A 34% ceding commission at a 63% loss ratio. So you'll want to do a chart with ceding commission and loss ratio, where the provisional, which will be in the middle, is 34%, and that is going to be at a 63% loss ratio. You're also given a 27% minimum ceding commission at a 70% loss ratio. We'll talk about the slide in a minute. So that was a 27% minimum at a 70% loss ratio. And let me label this provisional. Then you're given a 50% maximum at a 31% loss ratio. And this is your scale. So let's talk about what this means for a second. The provisional ceding commission is the commission that the reinsurer pays at the beginning or inception of the reinsurance contract to the cedant or the insurance company. But with the sliding scale commission, that ceding commission can go up or down depending on the actual loss ratio. A 63% loss ratio tells us at what point does the provisional ceding commission not change. A minimum ceding commission is the minimum commission the reinsurer will pay to the cedant no matter how bad the loss ratio is. So if the loss ratio on the reinsured business goes above 70%, the reinsurer will still pay 27% to the cedant. On the other side, if the loss ratio is even better than 31%, the reinsurer will pay a maximum of 50%. It won't go higher than that. Notice how the loss ratio and the ceding commission move in opposite directions. This makes sense because the higher the loss ratio, the worse the book of business performed. And the lower the loss ratio, the better the book of business performed. So this is a way of rewarding the cedant who, remember, has underwriting authority, who actually is the one that gets this business in and underwrites it based on the riskiness as they've evaluated it. And because they're the ones that underwrite it, you want to reward them or have an incentive for them to write so-called good business. Otherwise, if the cedant was heavily reinsuring this business, they might write highly risky business just to get more and more business in the door, to get a higher market share, knowing that the reinsurer is going to pay a high percentage of it. So let's look at how this works. In this particular problem, you are actually given the slide, a 1-for-1 slide to the minimum ceding commission and a 2-for-1 slide to the maximum ceding commission. But in the actual reinsurance problems that you're going to have to do for homework, you'll have to calculate the slide. So I'm going to show you how to calculate it. The way you do this is to look at the difference between the loss ratio and the ceding commission above and below the provisional. So in this case, the provisional is a difference of 34 minus 27, which is 7. And the loss ratio is a difference of 70 minus 63, again, which is 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1 to 1. This means that for every 1 point the loss ratio is higher than 63%, which is the provisional, the ceding commission will go down 1%. Again, because it's a 1-for-1. Now let's look at below the loss ratio. The difference between 63 and 31 is 32. And the difference between 34 and 50 is 16. So 32 divided by 16 equals 2, or a 2-for-1 slide. So for every 2 points the loss ratio is lower than 63, the provisional will slide 1. Or you could say that the ceding commission slides half a point for every 1 point the loss ratio slides. It might be easier to think of it that way. 1/2 point here and 1 point on the loss ratio side. So now let's apply this to our numbers. The first thing we do then is we need to calculate the loss ratio. We're given the numbers to calculate the loss ratio. First, on this book of business, we have $780,000 of incurred loss divided by $1.2 million of earned premium, and that's our loss ratio, which equals 65%. So we know we have to apply this to the slide. 65 minus 63, which is the provisional, equals 2. The loss ratio is 2 points higher than the provisional. So we know that we're going to be on this side of the slide for the first loss ratio, which means it's a 1-for-1. So our provisional ceding commission is 34, and remember, we're going in the opposite direction. So our loss ratio was 2 points higher. Our ceding commission has to be 2 points lower. So we have a 32% ceding commission. And think about this logically. Because our loss ratio was worse than the provisional, which is really the expected, we're penalized by 2 points with a 32% ceding commission. If the cedent had already been paid the 34% provisional, they would have to give back 2 points to the reinsurer. The next loss ratio is $470,000 divided by 1 million for a loss ratio of 47%. So in this case, we're down here. 47 minus our provisional of 63. This will give us a negative number, but it will tell us how much it needs to move, is negative 16. And remember that for every 1 point the loss ratio is lower than expected, we get half a point additional ceding commission. So 16 divided by 2 equals 8. So we're going to take 8 plus 34, which equals 42. In other words, we had a 16% better loss ratio than expected, but we only get half a point for every 1 point of better loss ratio. So negative 16 divided by 2 gives us 8, but it moves in the opposite direction, so it is a plus 34, the provisional, to give us 42. Now let's look at the third loss ratio. 1.1 million divided by 1.5 million equals 73%. This one's pretty easy because the 73% is up here above our maximum loss ratio or minimum ceding commission. So we just write 27%. Now it asks, what is the reinsurer's margin at A, B, and C above? So the margin is the percentage the reinsurer earns on the earned premium. So you have to think about, what does the reinsurer pay out? The reinsurer pays out two things, losses and ceding commission, and both are expressed as a percentage of premium in this problem. So the reinsurer's margin is 100 minus the percentage they pay in loss ratio, which is the same as the percentage the cedent pays, loss ratio, plus the ceding commission they pay. So in A, 100 minus the loss ratio of 65 plus the ceding commission of 32, which equals 100 minus 97, or 3%. That's their profit margin. That's A. Now for B, 100 minus the loss ratio, which was 47%, plus 42% the ceding commission. So the answer is 11%, because the combined ratio is 89%. And I'll put C over here, 100 minus 73% loss ratio plus 27% equals 0, because 73 plus 27 is 100. Now to calculate the margin at the minimum ceding commission. It's 100 minus the minimum ceding commission of 27%, and right when you hit the minimum, the loss ratio is 70. So that is 3%. And the maximum is 100 minus the max of 50 plus the loss ratio of 31 is 19%. So then question 3 is, overall, is the sliding scale favorable to the cedent or negative to the cedent? And the thing that helps us answer this is whether or not the ceding commission moves faster up or down. What I mean by this is you need to ask yourself, for every point the loss ratio moves up, how much does the ceding commission move down? So for every point the loss ratio moves up or goes higher, the ceding commission goes down 1%. Conversely, for every point the loss ratio goes down, how much do you get in ceding commission? And you don't have to write all of this out, but you do have to say why you think it's favorable or unfavorable. Well, we did this up here. For every point the loss ratio is better, the cedent only gets 1/2 a point. So the point is, the cedent is penalized more on the negative side of the loss ratio. They're penalized more when the loss ratio is worse than expected. They're only rewarded at 1/2 a point. So this scale is unfavorable because the ceding commission goes down faster than it goes up. And that's how you do the sliding scale ceding commission problems.